two new polls out today indicate Republicans are poised to take back the House and possibly even the Senate this fall. In the home stretch of the midterms campaign season, Republicans have a 49 to 40% advantage in the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll released this morning. And the midterm polls aren't the only problems for the White House. In the latest ABC Washington Post poll, 92% of Americans say the economy is in bad shape. Now, that may not be a surprise, but a majority, 52%, now disapprove of the way Obama is handling his job overall. Our Tuesday regular guest, New York Times chief political correspondent Jeff Zeleny, is off today, but we got a terrific panel to discuss all these latest polls. Democratic strategist Jamal Simmons and Republican strategist Cheri Jacobus, who also, I think you read a column for the Hill newspaper.
Yes, I do.
Thanks for joining us, both of you guys. Let me just start with you, Jamal. Of all the polling numbers, something else jumped out at me in the Washington Post ABC poll, and that is we see the voters, we see Republicans making huge gains in these polls, but there is one polling bit of data, the likely voters, the people who are going to turn out to the polls, 53% Republicans versus 40% Democrats. How can Democrats get those voters motivated, and why aren't they? Why are Republicans surging forward on those likely voters?
You know, the good news, the bad news are the national poll numbers. The good news for these candidates.
Well, the national poll numbers mean the ones we're just that just are kind of coming out, taking the broad snapshot. Okay.
But the good news for these candidates is that voters don't vote on national beliefs about generic Democrats and generic Republicans. Voters vote on one individual Democrat with a record and one individual Republican with a record, and they decide which one of these two people they trust the most to be able to represent them in Washington. So if I'm running in an individual race, I don't really care about that national number. I care about the numbers that have to do with me as a candidate and what my candidacy is going to mean to the voters in my district. And that's how Democrats are going to win.
But how are they going to do that when we see another report out today showing that some of these polling numbers suggest that Republicans may in fact pick up even more seats than people have been predicting? Again,
these are national numbers, but also these Democrats are running on their own individual ideas about what to do about the economy. They're also running on the fact they've got Republicans in many of these districts that really don't have an agenda. It seems that the Republican agenda, the only thing they're talking about is, you know, John Boehner says fire Obama's employees. Paul Ryan says let's privatize Social Security. And then you've got the whole Republican caucus that wants to borrow money from China to give tax cuts to rich people. I don't think that most people in the country think that's an agenda that's going to help middle class people, and so the Democratic challenge is to run on something that's actually going to help workers and middle class voters, and not run on these ideas like privatizing Social Security and borrowing money from China to give money to rich people.
But now, Cheri, this seems to suggest, based on what Jamal is saying, and I think what we're seeing is that it's going to be really a slugfest, a knockdown, drag out, where Democrats are going to be saying Republicans don't have any ideas, they're the party of no, and Republicans are going to be saying this isn't working. What is, you think, the Republicans' best strategy going forward? Continue to attack?
Well, Republicans don't really have to attack. They have to remind voters of these Democrats who voted with President Obama on the big issues that Americans didn't want. The stimulus package that did not work. We have this record unemployment. Obviously, Obamacare was a biggie. The American people did not want it. They were very vocal about that. Polls showed it. And this president, quite frankly, forced a lot of his Democrats in Congress to walk the plank who didn't want to. They may have agreed with him in theory on Obamacare, but some of them knew that the American people were not with them on this, that Democrats and the president had not made the sale, but they went along with it anyway. So right now, the way I see it is the American people, with these huge numbers that you see favoring Republicans, and all these new voters that are coming out that are not regular midterm voters who seem to be poised to vote for Republicans.
What they're doing,
new voters coming out. These huge likely voter numbers. What they're doing is imposing triage. They want to stop the bleeding, and this is the way to do it. If you take away the monopoly money that this president seems to be thinking our money is, that he's playing with, and again, this huge new spending proposal that Democrats are backing off on, sounds like just in the past 24 hours since the president says he wants to spend another $50 billion. The American people want it to stop. This is the quickest way to make it stop. Just take away his Democratic majority, and we can stop the madness.
Well, here's the problem with Cheri's analysis, which is that if you look at some of the broad swath of economists, this research and development tax credit is something that economists have been asking for a long time. People need that in order to jumpstart some of these businesses. And also $50 billion to start doing real projects and roads and bridges and all these things that are on the ground in communities that people can see. People want jobs. I think they're mad at the stimulus because they haven't felt it. But if they start to feel that some unemployment go down and they actually get jobs, I don't think they're going to care as much.
No, they don't want $50 billion on top of the failed stimulus, and to say that now this will really jumpstart things and this is what's going to start getting these infrastructure projects going. That's what the first stimulus
well,
did.
what's the Republican
but
idea?
it also seems, see, but again, I mean, it also seems like time's a waste in here. You know, people need to see some results, and I mean, is that going to happen between now and November? But again, I mean, just your kind of the debate that we're having here suggests that, well, what's the Republican plan? It's just attack, and you're saying Democrats' plan isn't working. We've got a clip from the president yesterday when he was out in Milwaukee. I want to play and get your response to this because he's really kind of attacking this head on, I think. I mean, he's really being in some ways surprisingly aggressive. Let's roll that tape.
In Milwaukee, that's what we're going to do again. That's been at the heart of what we've been doing over these last 20 months. Building our economy on a new foundation so that our middle class doesn't just survive this crisis. I want it to thrive. I want it to be stronger than it was before. And over the last 2 years, that's meant taking on some powerful interests. Some powerful interests who had been dominating the agenda in Washington for a very long time, and they're not always happy with me. They talk about me like a dog. That's not in my prepared remarks, it's just, but it's true.
They talk about me like a dog. I mean, Jamal, is that effective? I mean, are we going to see some pickup on this? And I mean, is he just going to stick it right back to him? It's going to work.
Yeah, part of what this is the president's now talking in many ways to some of those surge voters who Democrats need to turn out, who are Obama voters 2 years ago. Motivate them. They like the president, and if they feel like the Republicans are only saying no, not doing anything, and talking about him, we might get some uptick on that. But I think the real issue he's talking about are these bankers. He's in a horrible position here because the American public doesn't like what they did in order to help save Wall Street and the auto companies. But then the business people aren't happy with what he's doing on the other fronts. So you've got this horrible place where they're sandwiched in the middle between these two opinions. The president's got to find some of these voters that he can pull out to try to save some Democrats. And you're right, it is going to be a tough year for Democrats, but it's not going to be one where we lose the House and Senate.
Well, so you're thinking Democrats will lose, well,
Neither.
Certainly not the Senate, but not
Neither.
the House.
And especially because in these House races, you've got a much smaller population of voters. And so these individual members have a way to have relationships and to know their individual constituents much better than they do in these bigger, broader races. So I think that we can hold the line.
Yeah, that'll help them some.
Wait, but before we go on our predictions here, and we also need to talk about our national championship football predictions, but before we do that, because it will be Alabama, what about those comments? I mean, they talk about me like a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, is that going to be effective, as Jamal says, to kind of get people to say, listen, we like this guy, they're picking on him, let's go to the polls and defend him.
The polls show that the American people are rejecting the president and his policies. This isn't Republicans. Republicans are leading the charge, obviously, in Congress, but the American people are with them. Polls bear that out. The president thinks he's been treated like a dog by Republicans in Congress. He should probably stop treating them like a fire hydrant, and I think the polls show that the American people agree, and that's what they're trying to remedy this fall.
Well, how's the president treated Congress like a fire hydrant? Are you talking about Democrats that he pulled over to try to get support? What are you talking about?
Well, first of all, you have Democrats running from this president this election cycle. They're running ads where they aren't mentioning they're a Democrat. They don't want to be seen campaigning with him. They're treating him like he's got cooties. They really do want to run these independent races, as Jamal said. They want to stay as far away from the president and his policies as possible and have that special relationship with their own constituencies. They're desperate for that. Democrats can't turn out new voters. They can't fight for existing these independent voters. What they have to do is turn out their base. That's all they can do because they've got this enthusiasm gap. So that's why you hear this red meat from the president because they have to get their left wing very, very angry. And the only way to do that is to say, yeah, they're kicking me around in Washington, but it doesn't reflect reality, and the polls are reality.
Let me get Jamal's take on this, though, because obviously one of the things I think has been so striking about this president is that he's in some ways disappointed the left on issue after issue. He didn't do enough on health care, Guantanamo. I mean, enhanced interrogation techniques, I guess, was one that they were pleased with. But there have been a number of issues that they feel they've kind of been sold out by the president. So if you don't have your left motivated and independents aren't enthused, and that, of course, was critical to his victory, How do you pull this off?
Again,
it's the end of it. It's not the this isn't about the. Your point is it's not about the president.
It's not. Well, it is somewhat about the president. There are people who are going to go out there and are going to vote against the president. But the other thing is that these other members that are running these races, people voted for change in 2008. They still want change in 2010. So if I'm a Democrat who's running in a race, I'm not arguing that we should stay the course. I'm arguing more change. I want to fix things in Washington too. And if you vote for me, here's how I'm going to fix things in Washington. While the Republicans just want to bash the president. That's not going to help people get their jobs back. That's not going to help fix our schools. That's not going to help get us out of debt to the Chinese and the Saudis and everyone else around the world. So we need to have people who are going to actually have programs and policies, and that's the kind of campaign that these Democrats are running on if they want to win.
All right, now Jamal's predicted Democrats will keep the House and the Senate. I'm going to give you the last word. What's your prediction?
I think Republicans will take the House. I think there's a darn good chance we could take the Senate as well, although that's not as much in the bag, but it's looking better every day.
Okay, and then football, any bets on that? Of course it's going to be Alabama repeating. Right?
Over my head.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Wolverine fan in Michigan, so we haven't had a good few years.
Well, you know, Big Ten's a good conference. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for your insight. Really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you about this again.